Thus, the first purpose of all things is to proclaim, by means of their life and existence, the miracles of power and the traces of artistry of the Maker, and display them to the gaze of the glorious monarch. The second purpose of all existence, and the result of all being, contains to conscious creation. Everything is like a truth-displaying missive, an artistic poem, or a wise word of the glorious Maker, offered to the gaze of angels and jinn, of men and animals, and desiring to be read by them. It is an object for the contemplation and instruction of every conscious being that looks upon it. The third purpose of all existence and result of all being pertains to the soul of the thing itself, and consists of such minor consequences as the experience of pleasure and joy, and living with some degree of permanence and comfort. If we consider the purpose of a servant employed as a steersman on some royal ship, we see that only 1/100th of that purpose relates to the steersman himself, the wage he receives. 99/100th of that purpose relate to the king who owns the ship. A similar relation exists between the purpose of a thing related to its own self and its worldly existence, and its purpose related to its Maker. In the light of this multiplicity of purposes, we can now explain the ultimate compatibility between divine wisdom and economy on the one hand, and divine liberality and generosity, in fact, infinite generosity on the other hand, even though they appear to be opposites and contradictory. In the individual purposes of things, liberality and generosity predominate, and the name of most generous is manifested. From the point of view of individual purpose, fruits and grains are indeed beyond computation, and they demonstrate infinite generosity. But in universal purposes, wisdom predominates, and the name of all wise is manifested. However many purposes a tree has, each of its fruits contains that many purposes, and these can be divided into 3 categories we have established. Their universal purposes demonstrate an infinite wisdom and economy. Infinite wisdom and infinite generosity and liberality are thus combined, despite their apparent opposition. For example, one of the purposes for raising an army is the maintenance of order. Whatever troops are available for the purpose will suffice or be more than enough. But the whole army will be barely enough for other purposes, such as protecting the national frontiers and repelling enemies. Its size will be in perfect balance with utter wisdom. Thus, the wisdom of the state will be joined to its splendour, and it can be said that there is no excess in the army. Fifth principle. You will understand too that all of these transient objects have not been created for the sake of annihilation, in order to appear briefly and then vanish. The purpose for their creation is rather briefly to be assembled in existence and acquire the desired form, so that these may be noted, their images preserved, their meanings known, and their results recorded. This is so that, for example, everlasting spectacles might be wrought for the people of eternity, and that they might serve other purposes in the realm of eternity. You will understand that things have been created for eternity, not for annihilation. And as for apparent annihilation, it has the sense of completion of duty and a release from service. For every transient thing advances to annihilation with one aspect, but remains eternally with numerous other aspects. Look, for example, at the flower, a word of Allah's power. For a short time it smiles and looks at us, and then hides behind the veil of annihilation. It departs just like a word leaving your mouth. But it does so, entrusting thousands of its fellows to men's ears. It leaves behind meanings in men's minds, as numerous as those minds. The flower too, expressing its meaning and thus fulfilling its function, goes and departs. But it goes leaving its apparent form in the memory of everything that has seen it, its inner essence in every seed. It is as if each memory and seed were a camera to record the adornment of the flower, or a means for its perpetuation. If such be the case with an object at the simplest level of life, it can be readily understood how closely tied to eternity is man, the highest form of life, and the possessor of an eternal soul. Again, from the fact that the laws, each resembling a spirit, according to which large flowering and fruit-bearing plants are formed, and the representations of their forms are preserved and perpetuated in most regular fashion in tiny seeds throughout tempestuous changes. From this fact, it can be easily understood how closely tied and related to eternity is the spirit of man, which possesses an extremely exalted and comprehensive nature, and which, although clothed in a body, is a conscious and luminous law issuing from the divine command. Sixth principle. You will also understand that man has not been left to graze at will, with a halter loosely tied around his neck. On the contrary, the forms of all his deeds are recorded and registered, and the results of all his acts are preserved for the day when he shall be called to account. Seventh principle. You will understand further that the destruction visited upon the beautiful creatures of summer and spring in the autumn is not for the sake of annihilation. Instead, it is a form of dismissal after the completion of service. Footnote number 21. Yes, it is fitting that fruits, flowers and leaves on the tips and branches of a tree, proceeding from the treasuries of sustenance provided by divine mercy, should depart when they become old and their duties are at an end. Otherwise, the gate will remain closed to those that come after them, and a barrier will be erected against the expansion of Allah's mercy and the services to be performed by their brethren, i.e., other members of the species. Moreover, with the passing of youth, they will become wretched and distraught. Spring is like a fruit-bearing tree, that in turn is an indication of the plane of resurrection. Similarly, the world of humanity in every age is like a tree inviting contemplation, and the world as a whole is like an amazing tree, the fruits of which are dispatched to the market of the hereafter. It is also a form of emptying in order to clear a space for the new creation that is to come in the following spring, of preparing the ground and making ready for the beings that are to come and assume their functions. Finally, it is a form of divine warning to the conscious beings to awake from the neglect that causes them to forget their duties, from the drunken torpor that causes them to forget their obligation of offering thanks. Eighth principle. You will understand this too, that the eternal maker of this transient world has another, everlasting world. It is to this that he urges and impels his servants. Ninth principle. You will understand also that so compassionate a being will bestow upon his choice servants in that world such gifts as no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, nor has their image crossed the heart of any man. In this we believe.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم.
Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge save that which you have taught us. Indeed, you are all-knowing, all-wise.